Hi, I'm Sean Keef. I run sales enablement for Skybox Security, and here's a video demonstration of our technical whiteboard presentation. The foundation technology for Skybox is network modeling. To create this model, we import device configuration and routing table data from Layer 3 devices. These devices include firewalls, routers, switches, load balancers, and IPSs. This database can be imported via a variety of means depending on the devices and the environment. While there are several methods of importation, neither the SNMP protocol nor agents are ever used. Instead, native protocols such as SSH and HTTPS are used instead. Data can be imported directly from the devices, like using show run and show route for a Cisco firewall, from the device's manager, like going to Panorama in a Palo Alto world, from a third-party manager, like SolarWinds or NetMRI, or from a repository. However the data is collected, the final result is a very accurate network model that can be used to address a variety of use cases. These use cases are typically divided into two groups: security policy management and vulnerability and threat management. We'll start off by looking at the security policy management side. The primary use case in security policy management is policy compliance. Skybox has three separate engines that look at different aspects of the device and the network to determine policy compliance. The configuration compliance engine looks at how the device is configured and hardened. Here is where compliance standards like DISA-STIGs or CIS benchmarks would be implemented. The second engine is rule compliance. This engine ensures that the rules on the firewall are in compliance with the best practices of the least privilege principle. Here is where overly permissive rules would be found. Things like any and two fields, or rules that are allowing access over known risky ports. Lastly, our zone-to-zone access compliance engine is used to ensure that access between different portions of the network is in line with internal security policies or external regulations like PCI and NIST standards. Often, policy compliance efforts are hampered by messy rule sets that include unused and overlapping rules. It is often beneficial to address these issues before attempting to bring devices into compliance. Skybox has a complete set of tools to address messy rule sets that are the result of organic growth over time. Our overlapping rule engine finds shadowed and redundant rules, while rule usage analysis finds unused objects and rules. Finally, our trace data feature allows an operator to address overly permissive object groups by seeing the ports and IP addresses associated with the traffic that is passed by these rules. This gives a user the ability to shrink down objects without compromising access to the applications. If you think of policy compliance as getting the network into compliance, then Change Manager is about keeping it there. Without proper change management, once a network is certified as compliant, administrators must assume that the network will be pushed out of compliance as soon as changes are made to the devices. Change management is often thought of as the approval workflow system that supports the change management process. While Skybox provides a web-based workflow, this workflow is just the beginning of the story. The real power lies in the integration of the workflow with the Skybox analysis platform. This integration can affect an 80% decrease in the time it takes to approve and implement changes, while reducing rollbacks and decreasing the risk of those changes. One of the aspects of change management is lifecycle management. Here we apply metadata fields to rules, fields like owner, email address, and review date, and set up an automated system where rules are proactively reviewed according to a time schedule or policy. Once reviewed, the rule can be approved, say to live another year, or be set for deprovisioning. This security policy management flow shows firewall management maturity, with cleanup being at the bottom and lifecycle management being at the top. The vulnerability and threat management flow shows the life cycle of vulnerabilities. We'll start in the middle like we did on the other side with prioritization. This was the original use case for Skybox, to bring a level of prioritization to the vulnerability analysis process that went beyond simple severity levels. The problem we are addressing here is an inability for the remediation team to get their arms around the most critical vulnerabilities. In most organizations, critical severity vulnerabilities are constantly being worked on, while new ones are continuously being found. This churn typically produces no measurable risk reduction over time, and often produces an increase as high-risk vulnerabilities live longer than they should, while efforts are spent remediating lower-risk vulnerabilities that pose a fairly low threat. Skybox has a variety of ways to do prioritization, the most popular being our attack simulation method. Attack simulation shows us the highest risk vulnerabilities. You can think of these as perfect storm vulnerabilities. They are vulnerabilities on a host you care about. The exploitation of the vulnerability will cause something that you say is bad in your environment, and the vulnerability is exploitable through your defense in depth. Where a typical environment might have 20 to 30% of their vulnerabilities rated as critical severity, with Skybox, we can pare that list down to the 1% range of vulnerabilities you really need to worry about. Once those are dealt with, our other methods of prioritization can show you the next batch that needs to be worked on. This method ensures your remediation team is focused on the worst vulnerabilities first, producing a reduction in risk over time. The first stage in the vulnerability lifecycle is discovery. Of course, we need to know about the vulnerability before we prioritize it. The discovery story starts with our vulnerability dictionary. This is a database containing vulnerabilities compiled from over 20 different sources. Sources like the NVD and CVE databases, as well as our scan vendor partners like Qualys and software developers like Microsoft. Metadata, including what platforms are affected by the vulnerability, and CVSS data, are added to these vulnerabilities. Discovery of vulnerabilities is handled in two ways. The first is to use your existing vulnerability scanner and import the results. We support all the major off-the-shelf active vulnerability scanners. The vulnerability data is imported automatically after your scanner discovers them, typically on a daily basis. The second way is to deduce vulnerabilities by importing asset data from sources like SCCM that contain data on the operating system and patch level, as well as the application versions installed on the asset. This asset data is mixed with our vulnerability dictionary to produce a list of vulnerabilities on hosts without needing to do active scanning. This can be particularly useful when time is of the essence, or when the asset just can't be scanned by conventional means. Vulnerability Detector can work by itself as a discovery method, but is typically used in conjunction with an active scanner to provide additional insight into vulnerability discovery. Lastly, after the vulnerability is discovered and prioritized, it is remediated. Skybox provides deep insight into the success of remediation efforts. An organization's individual SLA or remediation goals can be input and graphs and reports can be generated showing how effective the remediation process is. Information such as which business units are remediating according to plan, where are critical vulnerabilities living the longest, and are we winning or losing the battle can be seen in this portion of the product. Finally, at the top of the pyramid is Horizon. Horizon is a tool that takes the output from many of the Skybox modules and presents those outputs as an attack surface visualization. Elements such as high-risk vulnerabilities and unsecure device configurations are combined on the same screen as indicators of exposure. This helps executives easily understand and manage the security risk of their entire organization. With network modeling as the foundation, the use cases that Skybox can address are numerous. The Skybox Enterprise Suite is a collection of 5 modules that can be used separately or in conjunction with one another. The suite operates on a single platform and database, runs on Linux and Windows, and can be supplied either as a physical or virtual appliance. Thank you for watching this video. Please visit our website for additional videos and resources.